At the current point of A Song of Ice and Fire, Winterfell is half a ruin, and in the hands of House Stark's most ancient enemies, the Boltons of the Dreadfort. The rivalry between the Stark Kings of Winter and the Bolton Red Kings of the Dreadfort stretches thousands of years back to the Long Night. Usually, the Starks would win, but sometimes the Boltons would win. King Royce Bolton II captured and burned Winterfell. 3 centuries later, his descendant, King Royce Bolton IV, did the same. That one had a habit of plunging his arm into the bellies of captive foes to pull out their entrails with his bare hand. Other Red Kings of House Bolton were said to have made cloaks out of the skins of the Stark kings and princes they'd captured and flayed. Eventually, the last Red King, Rhaegar the Huntsman Bolton, kneeled to the King of Winter, whose name was Stark. This was even before the Andals invaded Westeros, when only the first men and children of the forest populated the land. Now, thousands of years later, the Lord of House Bolton has killed another Stark king in the north, and his son Ramsay burned Winterfell. With Robb Stark dead and the north in the hands of Roose Bolton, it's about time the Starks were restored to their ancient frozen fortress. Let's take a look at Robb Stark's will, and make some predictions for how his bastard brother, Jon Snow, can reclaim Winterfell for House Stark. In Book 3, shortly before Robb attends the Red Wedding, he has a chat with his mother Catelyn at the ruins of Old Stones, once a great castle in the Riverlands. They discuss the succession of the North, while looking at the tomb of King Tristopher Mudd IV, who fought 100 battles and won 99 of them, but lost his last battle after being attacked by 7 Andal kings at once. Catelyn tells Robb that Tristopher's son was not his equal, and with him, the line of House Mudd ended. Robb says his heir failed him. Robb has recently married Jane Westerling, and had hoped to get her pregnant with an heir before leaving her at Riverrun and traveling to the twins for Edmure Tully's wedding. It didn't happen though, and Robb has no heir. He says, "If I should die in my next battle, the kingdom must not die with me." By law, Sansa is next in line of succession, so Winterfell and the North would pass to her and her lord husband, Tyrion Lannister. I cannot allow that. I will not allow that. That dwarf must never have the North. Catelyn agrees, and starts mentioning random, distant cousins in the Vale. A Waynwood, or a Corbray, or a Templeton. Sharply, Robb says, "You forget, my father had 4 sons." Robb wants Jon Snow to succeed him as king in the North if he should die without fathering a child, which he does. Catelyn says, a Snow is not a Stark. He is a brother of the Night's Watch, and a bastard cannot inherit. Robb says he can legitimize Jon with a royal decree, since he is a king. Catelyn brings up Aegon IV, the Unworthy, and how he legitimized his bastard, Daemon Blackfyre, and the realm paid for it. I know you trust Jon, but can you trust his sons, or their sons? If you make Jon legitimate, there is no way to turn him bastard again. Should he wed and breed, any sons you have by Jane will never be safe. But Robb's mind is set. He says, Jon would never harm a son of mine. Catelyn suggests Arya, who at this point is missing, but is actually headed to the twins with Sandor Clegane to meet up with Robb and Catelyn. But they don't know that. Robb says, why do you lie to yourself? Arya's gone, the same as Bran and Rickon, and they'll kill Sansa too once the dwarf gets a child from her. Jon is the only brother that remains to me. Should I die without issue, I want him to succeed me as king in the North. A few days later, Robb holds a meeting. Those in attendance were Lord Jason Mallister, Lord Great John Umber, Lord Galbraith Glover, Lady Mage Mormont, Lord Edmure Tully, and Lady Catelyn. A guest is there too, the captain of a ship called the Miraham, who had once sailed Theon to the Iron Islands, where he then betrayed Robb. The captain spent half a year in the Iron Islands, but left after King Baelon died, and Euron Crowseye came and sat himself upon the sea stone chair. The captain tells all of this to the lords in the tent, and Robb says that with Baelon Greyjoy dead, Victarion Greyjoy, who holds Moat Cailin, will have to abandon the North and press his claim for the Iron Islands, giving Robb the perfect opportunity to go north and retake Winterfell. So Robb devises a strategy. He will use 2 of Jason Mallister's longships, and place Mage Mormont on one and Galbert Glover on the other. Both will sail through the neck, flying Robb's banner, and will deliver Robb's message to Howland Reed. Meanwhile, Robb will attend Edmure's wedding, join the armies of Houses Bolton and Frey, and split them up in the neck. The central force is to be commanded by Robb himself, and if Mage and Galbert are successful in meeting with Howland Reed, the Crannogman is to send guides to Robb's army and escort them secretly to the other side of Moat Cailin, where all 3 forces will fall upon the moat and destroy whatever is left of Victarion Greyjoy's garrison. It's a good plan. Too bad someone had to ruin it. At the end of the meeting, Robb tells his lords that, "I have no son as yet. My brothers Bran and Rickon are dead, and my sister is wed to a Lannister. I've thought long and hard about who might follow me. I command you now, as my true and loyal lords, to fix your seals to this document as witnesses to my decision." So everyone in this room, Mallister, Umber, Glover, Mormont, Tully, and Catelyn, know who Robb's chosen heir is. This is one of the several Chekhov's guns that George Martin put into the story early on that will hopefully pay off in The Winds of Winter. Just a quick note, there are some theories that Robb didn't name Jon his heir in this letter, since the text doesn't explicitly give the name set down in the will. The most common alternative theory is that Robb actually named his mother Catelyn as his heir. Some people think this because during this meeting, Robb commands Catelyn to go to Seaguard after the wedding where she'll be safe while Robb retakes the north. But it honestly doesn't make any sense to me beyond that. We didn't see Catelyn change Robb's mind about legitimizing Jon. He was very clear he wanted Jon to succeed him. Also, Catelyn is not a Stark by blood, which is clearly important to Robb since he didn't want some distant relative from the Vale to get Winterfell either. He also doesn't want Sansa to get Winterfell because her hypothetical children with Tyrion would be Lannisters. Robb specifically wants a Stark in Winterfell, so that's why he legitimizes Jon Snow and names him the heir. I just don't see the narrative point in Robb naming anyone but Jon, but maybe George Martin left it ambiguous for a reason. Or maybe he just didn't think he'd have to spell it out for us that Jon is the heir, given what Robb says to Catelyn literally 6 pages beforehand. So after Robb and Catelyn are killed at the Red Wedding, these are the people who know about the will. We don't actually know where the will itself is. That piece of paper might have been sent with Mage and Galbert to the Neck with Howland Reed, but Robb did mention he was worried that they'd be captured, so he gave them fake instructions to carry. Would he want enemies to know that Jon has been legitimized, thus placing a target on his brother's back? The will also may have been taken by the captain of the Miraham, who was waiting outside the tent during Robb's meeting. The captain did mention that he's based in Old Town, so maybe Robb told him to take his will to the Citadel to establish a record of it. Sam Tarly is in Old Town training to be a maester, so perhaps he finds Robb's will and presents it to the Northern Lords whenever he goes back north. We don't know where the will is, we just know who knows about it. My guess is that it did go with Mage and Galbert to the Neck, and they showed it to Howland Reed, who is just full of secrets. If this is true, Howland knows that Jon was legitimized by Robb's decree, and that he's Robb's chosen heir. He also was with Ned Stark at the Tower of Joy, and found Ned holding Lyanna's baby, and that baby is likely Jon Snow. Howland also sent his kids, Jojen and Mira, to Winterfell to meet Bran Stark. This is because Jojen had a green dream of a winged wolf in chains, and Howland probably saw that as foreshadowing that Bran would be in trouble. Howland himself spent a winter on the Isle of Faces as a young man, which is said to be inhabited by the magical green men. So Howland is a character who knows a lot, and he'll have a lot to say whenever he enters the story. It's also possible that Mage Mormont somehow got word of Robb's will to her family on Bear Island. In Book 5, Asha Greyjoy meets Alysanne Mormont, Mage's eldest living daughter. Alysanne says that her younger sisters, Lyra and Jorel, are currently with Mage. She doesn't specify where, but if all went according to plan, despite Robb being murdered, Mage would be in the Neck, plotting with Howland Reed. Perhaps Lyra and Jorel were with her the entire time, but the text never mentions them before this. So maybe Mage got word back to Bear Island, and her daughters joined her in the Neck to help in some way. Lyanna Mormont, The youngest daughter is left on Bear Island to rule. When Stannis Baratheon asks for House Mormont's support, she sends him a letter stating that Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north, whose name is Stark. Maybe her mother told her that Robb legitimized Jon and named him his heir. She does use the present tense instead of saying whose name was Stark, but that's just speculation. Besides Galbert, Mage, and possibly Howland, Edmure Tully also witnessed Robb's decision. Edmure was taken captive the night of the Red Wedding, until Jaime Lannister meets with him during the Frey's failed siege of Riverrun. Jaime gives Edmure a choice. He can either tell Riverrun to surrender and live comfortably at Casterly Rock as a hostage, along with his wife Roslyn and their unborn child, or Jaime will assault Riverrun, kill its defenders, the Blackfish among them, and when Edmure's baby is born, Jaime says he'll put it in a catapult and fling it towards the castle. Jaime lets Edmure have a bath and think it over, while Thomas Evans sings the Rains of Castamere. Edmure surrenders Riverrun, but in doing so, two of his men, Sir Desmond Grell and Sir Robin Rhaegar, leave Riverrun to join the Night's Watch. It's possible that Edmure told them about Robb's will, and they head to Castle Black in order to inform Jon and the rest of the North. Or maybe they're just aging knights with nowhere else to go. In that same vein, perhaps Edmure also told his uncle Brynden Blackfish about the will before he helped him escape. The Blackfish's whereabouts are unknown, but it's unclear if he would want to help Jon. When Jaime tells Brynden about Jon being Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, Brynden assumes the Lannisters gave him that position. While Edmure Tully is a prisoner of the Lannisters, Lord Jason Mallister is a prisoner in his own castle at Seaguard. He surrendered to Black Walder Frey to save his son Patrick, so there's probably not much he can do about Robb's will either. Great Jon Umber is a prisoner as well. He's been at the Twins ever since the Red Wedding. His uncles Hother and Mors Umber are divided. Hother has sworn fealty to Roose Bolton, while Mors declared for King Stannis. Although it's likely that Hother only declared for Roose Bolton because his nephew the Great Jon is still a prisoner of the Freys, and he wants to protect him. If the Freys are defeated in the Winds of Winter, the Great Jon will be free to travel north and tell everyone about Robb's will. There is a theory that the Brotherhood Without Banners, now being led by the vengeful, zombified Catelyn Stark, will perform a Red Wedding 2.0 when Davin Lannister marries a Frey girl at the Twins. That could lead to the Great Jon's escape, but for now, he's stuck at the Twins. So 3 out of the 6 witnesses to Robb's will are prisoners, and one is Robb's mother Catelyn, now Lady Stoneheart, who still carries Robb's iron crown with her wherever she goes, determined to kill all those who had a hand in betraying her son. Lady Stoneheart can't speak due to her throat being slit, and given that she never liked Jon in the first place, and was against Robb legitimizing him, it's very unlikely that she would try to give Robb's crown to Jon. Lady Stoneheart is a mystery though. In Book 4, we learn that she went into the Neck after being chased by Black Walder Frey. Stoneheart turns up later around the inn at the crossroads, but the outlaws who went into the Neck with her were never seen again. Sir Danwell Frey thinks Howland Reed is sheltering them, so it's possible that any combination of an undead Catelyn, Galbraith Glover, and Mage Mormont all went to Greywater Watch and spoke to Howland Reed. Would Stoneheart have told Howland about Robb's will? Would Howland have told Stoneheart about Jon not really being Ned's bastard, but instead the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna? Ultimately, the best chance of Robb's will ever turning up in the north is Mage Mormont or Galbraith Glover. They've been MIA ever since they departed for the Neck, and the only time either of them is mentioned is by Alysanne Mormont, who doesn't give away their location, but simply confirms that Mage is not at Bear Island. In all likelihood, she and Galbraith Glover are floating around the Neck in Howland's moving castle. Let's take a minute to discuss who the rightful heir to the north even is, assuming the Boltons are defeated. We don't know the specific terms of Robb's will, but it likely, at the very least, legitimizes Jon, and probably specifically names Jon as the heir as well. But Robb wrote this will under the belief that Arya, Bran, and Rickon were all dead. All 3 are very much alive. Arya is in Braavos, training with the Faceless Men, but is sure to return to Westeros in the Winds of Winter. Bran is training with Bloodraven beyond the Wall, but his storyline probably leads to him becoming the next Three-Eyed Crow, not the Lord of Winterfell. Rickon is on Skagos with Shaggy Dog and Osha. Davos Seaworth is traveling there in the Winds of Winter to find Rickon and bring him back so that Wyman Manderly can install him as Lord of Winterfell. But Rickon is 6 and would need a regent. The thing is, all 5 Stark kids are the heir, depending on who you ask. Technically, Bran is Robb's heir, as his eldest living brother, but almost everyone believes Bran is dead, except for Sam Tarly, who meets him at the Night Fort. The Manderlys also know Bran escaped Winterfell, but have no idea where he went. They do, however, know that Rickon is on Skagos, so the Manderlys and their camp view Rickon as the heir, simply because his location is known, and Bran's isn't. To most people in Westeros, Sansa is considered Robb's heir, as all the other Starks are dead or presumed dead, and Jon is a bastard. Even Sansa herself believes all her siblings are dead, so maybe she and Littlefinger pursue the north in the Winds of Winter. She is betrothed to Harry the heir, Sweet Robin's cousin, but Robin would have to die before Sansa would become the Lady of the Eyrie. While King's Landing and the Iron Throne view Sansa as a traitor, since her father was, and she conveniently disappeared at the Purple Wedding. So King's Landing sees Arya as the heir, despite not knowing where she is, simply because that's convenient for them, and Cersei doesn't like to do a lot of thinking. So they create their own Arya out of Jane Poole, and send her north to marry Ramsay. Much of the North has no reason to believe that the girl in Winterfell is anyone but the real Arya, as most have never seen her. But at the current point in the story, Jane has escaped with Theon to Stannis' camp, and the real Arya is in Braavos. Lastly, those aforementioned lords who were present at Robb's meeting know that Jon is his chosen heir, and legitimized as a true son of Stark. The only people who can realistically do anything with that information are probably Mage Mormont, Galbraith Glover, and Howland Reed, all of whom are in the neck, waiting for George Martin to give them something to do. So there's all these mini conspiracies in the North regarding who gets Winterfell, because they sure as hell aren't going to let the Boltons keep it. George always opts for the path of most destruction in his stories, like the Dance of the Dragons happening instead of any number of solutions. So having political confusion between 5 claimants to Winterfell is certainly fitting. So we've discussed Robb's will and who knows about it. We've discussed who different people think the rightful heir to Winterfell is, with or without Robb's will resurfacing. Now let's consider the impact on the story Robb's will might have. The answer is very little, at least not in the way it's intended to. Even if we assume all the Stark kids are united at Winterfell sometime in the second half of the Winds of Winter, Robb's will won't make a difference in who becomes the Lord or Lady of the North. Jon is the one named in Robb's will, but this exact situation already happened to Jon in Book 3. He was already given a chance to leave the Night's Watch, to become a legitimate Stark, and to become Lord of Winterfell, and he refused Stannis' offer. If Jon wanted to be Lord Jon Stark of Winterfell, he would be, but that's not the direction of his story. Jon's greatest impact on the story comes from his devotion to unifying the realm against the coming threat of the others. It's not to become Lord of Winterfell, or King of Westeros. It's to lead the living against the dead. Also, Jon will know that Robb wrote his will under the belief that the rest of his siblings were dead. Jon doesn't chase power. He didn't ask to be Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, even though G.R. Mormont was grooming him to be his successor. He didn't accept Stannis' offer either. If Jon hears about Robb's will, but one of his siblings is alive and well, he will gladly step aside for them. Otherwise, Jon would become exactly what Catelyn feared, a bastard who steals Winterfell for himself and passes it to his sons. The only way Jon takes Winterfell is if he's the only option. He won't pursue power for his own sake, but if the Lords of the North thrust power upon him, Jon will become the ruler of the North. George Martin has said The Winds of Winter will be his darkest book yet, but there is surely room for light as well. Before the dark comes, the Stark kids could be united and preparing to face the others together, as they've spent the entire story thus far apart. There isn't going to be a prolonged conflict between them, like there was in the TV series. Not only is there no time for that,
There's no time for that. There's no time for any of this.
It just doesn't make sense for the characters. The main goal will be to take Winterfell from the Boltons and return it to Stark hands. Once they've accomplished this, I believe they'll all give way to Rickon, assuming Davos is able to bring him safely back from Skagos. Rickon is the eldest living son of Ned Stark after Bran, and the North, led by Wyman Manderly, would rally around him with zero controversy, unlike Jon, who some may see only as a bastard, or a Night's Watch deserter. Rickon is the easiest solution who appeases everyone, assuming Bran doesn't consider himself an option. Rickon could become the titular Lord of Winterfell, and Jon and Sansa could help him rule. George R.R. Martin has said that Rickon will play an important role in the story, and at the age of 6, I'm not sure what role that could be other than becoming the Lord of Winterfell. He won't be used as arrow fodder, at least. So is Robb's will pointless if Jon decides not to use the claim that it gives him? The opposite, actually, because it will give Howland Reed a reason to enter the story. Like Robb's will, Howland himself is another major Chekhov's gun, having been mentioned in Book 1, and again in Book 3, but never appearing on page. Knowing about who Robb's chosen successor was is the least interesting thing about him. Howland Reed still has Ned Stark's bones at Greywater Watch. They were sent north, intercepted at the neck, and never made their way to Winterfell. I can honestly see Howland Reed bringing his old friend's bones to Winterfell, so the Stark kids can bury their father in the crypts. Mayhaps the crypts are where Howland Reed will tell Jon about his parents, and that will be the culmination of Robb's will. It will all have been worth it if it leads to this conversation between Howland Reed and Jon Snow, the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and the prince who was promised. Maybe. The crypts are waiting for Jon. They've taunted him in his dreams for years. He says that all my dreams are of the crypts, of the Stone Kings on their thrones. Something is waiting for Jon Snow in the crypts of Winterfell. Why not Howland Reed, with a story to tell? So to recap, before Robb's death, he tells his mother he wants Jon Snow to succeed him if he died without an heir. He writes this in a will, and has his lords sign the will as witnesses. 2 of them, Galbraith Glover and Mage Mormont, go to Howland Reed in the neck. They've been there ever since Book 3, and now that Robb has died and the Boltons have the North, they must make their move. Jon is dead, but will surely be resurrected in the Winds of Winter. If he has a hand in the military defeat of House Bolton, he may become the de facto leader of the North regardless of Robb's will. However, Robb's will can still give him a claim should he want it. But Jon doesn't want it.
I don't want it. I never have.
That's about the only damn thing Season 8 got right about Jon Snow. Rickon or Sansa or someone else will take the title of Lord of Winterfell, because Jon Snow is destined for greater things. To unite not only the North, but the entirety of Westeros if he can, and even Daenerys and her dragons, and all her armies, so that the living can have a fighting chance at defeating the others. Let me know in the comments how you think Robb's will may impact the story in the Winds of Winter. Essentially, I think it gives a logical reason for Howland Reed to enter the fold, and drop some lore on both the readers and Jon Snow. Also, let me know if you're interested in a whole video regarding Jon Snow and the Winterfell crypts. There is a lot to unpack there. Thanks for watching and subscribing.